Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you virtually. Many of you old friends at the AI plus Climate Action in Asia Foresight Workshop. I'm Varad Pande, a partner at BCG, and I work at the intersection of climate, nature, and technology. I think the scenario building or strategic foresights approach is so timely, and I'm delighted that perhaps the best minds in the region have gathered together to action it. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I did want to share with you two things today. One, tell you about a new alliance on climate that we are helping shape, exactly at the intersection of climate and AI, and invite you to join us. Second, Urvashi and Donna have also asked me to share some perspectives on climate finance in the region, in Asia, which really is the big elephant in the room in all climate discussions. So happy to share these with you. First, let's talk about the alliance. An alliance on climate adaptation and resilience that we are putting together in Southeast Asia. The context is this. Individually, Southeast Asian nations are often overlooked by climate change in climate change conversations. Taken collectively, however, the region is huge. It's projected to be the fourth largest economy by 2030. It's a biodiversity hotspot, host to vital ecosystems such as a third of the world's mangroves, seagrass, and coral reefs, and 80% of aquaculture. Unfortunately, the region is at massive risk. 4 out of the top 10 countries most affected by climate change globally are in Southeast Asia. On average, Southeast Asian countries stand to lose 5% of GDP annually, and 450 million people are directly affected by rising climate hazards. And despite what's at stake, Southeast Asia is one of the most unprepared regions for climate change. Enter SEACAR, the Southeast Asia Alliance, the Southeast Asia Coalition for Adaptation and Resilience, initiated by the World Wildlife WWF, BCG, and Think City to build a collective climate ANR, adaptation and resilience narrative, and drive action across Southeast Asia. This will be formally launched in the COP28 in the UAE. I think the distinguishing feature of this alliance is that we must harness ANR solutions that stem from our oldest and newest friends of humanity. Nature-based solutions, the oldest friends, and climate analytics and AI, our newest friends. So nature-based solutions harness the power of nature to boost natural ecosystems, biodiversity, and human well-being to address societal issues like climate change. An example would be, say, urban greening projects that are designed to improve stormwater collection in cities. And climate analytics and AI, something you'll discuss a lot today, is our newest friend. It has unique ability to process complex data sets on climate impact that can boost adaptation and resilience via several use cases. One use case which we have found powerful in our work with countries and cities recently is really using AI to quantify the cost of inaction. Example, the economic, social, and natural costs, which then enables governments, planners, and others to identify the right priorities, develop a portfolio of bankable projects, and raise funding from public and private sources to get them implemented. Hand in hand, these two tools can advance the resilience of cities and communities across themes, natural ecosystems, infrastructure, trade, water, agriculture, and health. And we envision to shine the spotlight on each of these themes through the Alliance's journey. We expect the Alliance will produce bespoke knowledge capital, for example, playbooks for community action, similar to work that we have done in the past on various topics. But beyond knowledge products, the real success of this alliance will be if we are able to accelerate deployment of effective ANR solutions in real-life settings through collaboration. And this is where I'd love to invite all of you to join this alliance in some way. Please reach out to me, and I'm happy to share with you more information on how to do this. Which brings me to the second question, which is the question of climate finance that the Digital Future Labs team also asked me to speak on today. And of course, this is a very large topic. It requires years of thinking, PhDs, and so on. Let me try and summarize this topic in a few minutes that we have today. So first, I'd like to say that Asia really is the place where the battle for climate change will be won or lost. And this is for two reasons. The first, of course, is the vulnerability to climate impacts. Asia is perhaps the region most vulnerable to climate change. More than 40% of climate-related disasters this century have been in Asia and the Pacific. And the lives of nearly 3 billion people are at stake. And the second reason is its growth trajectory. Asia's growth trajectory has significant implication for global climate goals, with 1 billion people still living under the $3.2 a day line. And as households in the region become wealthier, energy demand will increase, particularly with Asia's projected growth of the middle-class consumers, surpassing all other regions. And if Asia follows the same pattern of consumption and of energy use as the global north, its carbon emissions will explode, and we can kiss goodbye to any ambition of keeping global temperature rise to 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius. And so Asia has to be at the frontier, and the choices Asia makes today in this decade will determine whether we are going to meet our global goals on climate change. Now, all of this requires a lot of money, right? And unfortunately, all the estimates show that we are way off in terms of how much money we need and how much money we are putting in to solve the climate crisis. All the estimates show we need about $3 to $4 billion a year from now to 2050, and we are currently investing about $600 billion. So just 20% of what we need to invest. And adaptation and resilience, I keep coming back to this, which is really about ensuring cities have the resilience to deal with the changes we're already locked into, is really the neglected cousin in the climate debate. Mitigation gets a lot of the attention, which is to actually reduce carbon emissions. Adaptation and resilience, unfortunately, does not. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres recently said, adaptation cannot be the neglected half of the climate equation. And adaptation's importance cannot be overstated. There was a recent Global Commission on Adaptation that found that you can get a cost-benefit ratio ranging from 2:1 to 10:1 on adaptation investments. It found that an investment of 1.8 trillion, if done before 2030 in adaptation, can generate 7 trillion plus in benefits if targeted at 5 areas of adaptation: early warning systems, climate resilient infrastructure, improved dryland agriculture, mangrove protection, and making water sources more resilient. Adaptation investments also bring multiple benefits that go beyond this cost-benefit equation. It's called the triple dividend of resilience: to reduce future losses and damage, create economic benefits, for example, by reducing risk, increasing productivity, and promoting innovation that can bring a range of social and economic benefits. These dividends can develop regardless of whether or not climate-related shocks occur. And unfortunately, climate adaptation is a neglected cousin for many reasons. Mitigation efforts are often seen as more straightforward, measurable, with direct actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? Visible, quantifiable results. In contrast, adaptation involves very complex, context-specific measures that require significant planning, resources, coordination. And of course, mitigation is a global public good, as the carbon stock is a shared resource for all of us and affects all, the rich and the poor, the developed and the developing, the North and the South, equally. Adaptation, unfortunately, is local and affects only those locally who are affected by climate shocks. So this is the context, and I think this is the challenge. Adaptation finance, by the way, is even harder to solve than mitigation finance. UNFCCC estimates that we are sitting at an adaptation funding gap of $200 billion a year, 60% of which come to Asia. And the real issue is many adaptation projects are not bankable in the commercial sense of cash flows to commercial investors, unlike many mitigation projects like EVs or renewable energy plants. And coupled with dwindling public finances, which are already under deep strain, the room for adaptation financing is rather limited. So that's the story of the glass half empty, but I really feel that the glass is getting a little bit half full. And let me tell you why. I think there are important green shoots in the adaptation financing world that give me hope. And these green shoots are of three types. I'm calling them new commitments, new instruments, and new initiatives. So let's cover them quickly, all three of them. New commitments. We are seeing new energy in the climate finance agenda, including adaptation finance, powered by something called the Bridgetown Initiative, championed by the indomitable Prime Minister of Barbados, an icon figure of climate action these days, Mia Mottley. This plan, which is getting good traction, has in its agenda comprehensive reforms of the multilateral development banks, like the World Bank and the ADB, enabling them to raise new capital, providing more liquidity and debt sustainability to the global south, and identifying creative ways to unlock private capital through innovative new mechanisms. The multilateral development banks are also changing their goalposts, which is great. The new World Bank president, Ajay Banga, is making all the right statements. In our region, the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, has rechristened itself as Asia Pacific's Climate Bank and become the first MDB to make a very specific climate finance commitment, $100 billion by 2030. It has the highest allocation to climate finance to adaptation, 40% of any major financing institution. So the big picture, new commitments, new change in paradigms happening both at the global and the Asia level, which give me hope. Number one. Number two, new instruments. We are seeing a plethora of new financial instruments that can unlock more capital for climate change and especially adaptation. And the nature of these instruments are catalytic instruments, which is, can they raise additional capital on the back of the money they bring in? And let me give you just two examples, and I'm focusing on adaptation here. The first is something called CAT bonds, or catastrophe bonds, which are bonds that give returns to investors as normal bonds. But if a predefined catastrophic event happens in the issuing country, there's no repayment obligation. And this is an interesting instrument. Many countries in partnership with organizations like the World Bank are trying. Philippines is a success story in our region of doing this, of issuing these, and has actually benefited from when cyclone struck the Philippines in 2021. It actually benefited from the structure of this instrument. Another very innovative instrument which we are seeing is something called the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism, or ABM, which aims to value and monetize adaptation benefits from a project that allows you to raise more money for adaptation. So what happens in an ABM is that development partners or funds or philanthropists sign purchase agreements for certified adaptation benefits that may accrue from a project. And then the project developer, project proponent, can use this commitment as a collateral to raise private sector capital for that project. It essentially increases the bankability of a project, which might have been at the margin, because adaptation benefit mechanism cash flows will come later when the project is implemented. It increases the viability, bankability of the project. So it's a very interesting idea. This was launched by the African Development Bank in 2019. A few pilot projects have been done. One, I think, for climate resilient cocoa production in Côte d'Ivoire, and another for rapid dams to counter flooding in Lagos, Nigeria. But it's the start of a journey. And I think there's a lot of hope resting in these kind of innovative finance mechanisms, because they have the potential to attract private sector capital and foster public-private partnerships in the space, specifically with adaptation finance, where these are hard to do. So the second green shoot really is the fact that we are seeing a number of new instruments, and I have a whole list of these, which I'm happy to share with you in a longer conversation. And the third green shoot, I think, are new initiatives or new financing facilities which are coming up to catalyze more funding. And I'll give you two examples here. The first is something called the Innovative Finance Facility for Climate in Asia and Pacific, called IFCAP, which is in partnership with the ADB. What this is a multi-donor financing partnership facility with the goal of scaling up finance for accelerated action against climate change in Asia and Pacific. So what IFCAP does is it provides guarantees for parts of ADB's sovereign loan portfolio to enable EDB to free up its capital to increase lending for climate investments. And then it also gives supplementary grants that will facilitate project preparation, capacity building, and knowledge solutions. And so they call their model 1 in, 5 out, $1 in, $5 out, which means that the initial guarantee commitment of $3 billion could create up to $15 billion in new loans for much needed climate projects across Asia. So I think that's the kind of new innovative thinking of unlock of catalyzing capital at a scale that is needed. And I think IFCAP is a great example of this in the Asian context. Similarly, I wanted to mention something called CRAFT, which is the Climate Resilience and Adaptation Finance and Technology Transfer Facility. It's quite a mouthful, but the concept is straightforward. It's to take the private equity approach to develop and support businesses that are working on adaptation resilience. I think it recognizing that there are many climate resilience solutions like risk and weather analytics, like agriculture analytics, like catastrophe risk modeling, distributed water solutions, to name a few. Can we create a facility that will make growth equity investments in these type of companies which have climate resilient solutions to address the impacts and risk of climate change? And at least 2/3 of the investments under CRAFT will be targeted to developing countries. So CRAFT, which is managed by Lightsmith Group, which is a private equity company and supported by a bunch of global donors, is structured as a private equity fund with a blended structure, which includes layers of concessional equity, a layer of commercial equity, and a complementary technical assistance facility, which will provide grant financing to support the application of technologies and solutions of the portfolio companies in lower income countries. So this is just to give you a sense of new facilities, new platforms which are also coming up. And I think the combination of the new commitments, the new financial instruments, and the new initiatives that we are seeing out there give me some hope that although the challenge of climate finance is extremely hard, we might be making some important early moves to tackle it. So to conclude, friends, I want to take license from Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, saying that climate change may feel like the winter of despair, but let's convert it to a spring of hope. And I think there are green shoots, there is a path, and I hope that the journey you have begun today in this workshop, talking about the interplay of climate and AI, will play an important role in shaping that journey. I wish your deliberations all the best. Thank you so much.